Welcome everyone to Reroll MMA, multiple martial arts podcast, where we explore the intersection of martial arts, society, and culture. I'm Danny.
And I'm Elliot.
I want to kick off our first show of 2021, by first kind of thinking about where we are at the beginning of the year, and I've been looking forward to get a chance to talk to you. We're recording this after the January 6th incident in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that we were trying to do within this venue is to think about just how things relate. And I really want to hear your thoughts, Elliot. What did you think about what happened on January 6th in D.C.?
I think there was a lot of people who, where do I start? First off, a bunch of people who can't stand democracy. They don't, a lot of these people are misinformed. I'm talking about the protesters and rioters and, the attempted coup. I mean, a lot of these are conspiracy theorists and, who don't appreciate democracy, who cannot, don't know how it is to lose. I mean, this is how it works. This is ebb and flow. And you know what? I'm usually not the, quote unquote law and order kind of guy, but there is, if we're talking about like say anarchism, there are no rulers, but there are rules. There's rules to things, and there's a sense of respect. And, I think it's pretty disgusting and infantile for some of these protesters to say spread all their, defecation and urination, like all their wall and floors of Congress. That's pretty bad. With that said, I am glad that, the inauguration day was fairly smooth, and I'm not saying that the new administration has all the answers, but I think it's a little bit more stable. How do you feel, Danny?
Well, in regards to just my thoughts on January 6th, and I want to kind of give context that my response is really based on a little bit of my take on politics, but also my response as an observer looking at the mayhem, the chaos, the potential and actual violence. And I felt that it was, I don't know, like you, disappointing, but also I don't know, I'm trying to be careful because it feels disrespectful to say that there were too many actors and not everyone knew their script, if it makes sense. Some people were ridiculous. Like I just think they like dummies. Like, and I say dummies in the literal, like no thought, just a body, and they're being used by other people. Like the way we can have a sparring dummy, a jiu-jitsu dummy, and we place it wherever we want. I saw a lot of that like, unfortunately, that sense of anger was just co-opted by some that had a little bit more insight on what they were going to do. And I was really just not surprised. I think it's important to place a little bit of context that like I thought that what I was seeing could be something that I was accustomed to seeing in other parts of the world, and I didn't give them credit. I said they're not able to do that here, and I thought about it in the ways that like they didn't have all the right pieces, but they had a lot of anger, and I want to just kind of maybe use that as a springboard to where we are, because I was thinking about wanting to, reach out to you and hear your thoughts on it, because we haven't really talked much. I haven't been able to meet up in a good while. Um, but part of this conversation that we developed last year was to have a space that you and I could talk about martial arts, society, politics, how it all relates. And I saw a lot of our conversations there. A lot of things, for example, whether it had to do with those people that were trained, and I put that in quote, in some type of combative arts, and then questioning like, well, shouldn't you have learned a little bit more about how things work? Whether that you can't use violence to get your way. Uh, I think about these conversations that we had last season, and as a kind of hint, we are gonna transition. I think it's fair to think about this 2021 as marking season number 2 of Reroll MMA. To me, it's pretty exciting. I mean, we've done a little bit over 20 shows, I think. And that puts us in a good spot where we ask ourselves, what have we learned? And where do we go from here? And I think that's a good segue right now. I'd like to kind of think about that right now. Just as you feel, that you can kind of activate some of our past conversations, were you able to see some of the stuff that we've talked about among the chaos? Or was that just too, you put it away and it didn't relate at all?
The chaos, you mean in American politics? Well, I think we, especially now, with the internet, communication and everything, and with the world of martial arts, for example, the growing world of the mixed martial arts, the sport of mixed martial arts. It's interesting because I like to know where these fighters are from and where they're training, and how it's gone so international. These different countries. You know, um, you know, why would I know about certain? I think I don't want to. Russian territories, I suppose. Why would I know some of these areas like Kyrgyzstan, and all that stuff? And there's a lot of great fighters coming out of there, and just seeing the toughness of some of these people, and a lot of stuff relates. With you talk about chaos. Yeah, I mean the world is there's so much discussion and so much multiple conversations going on, and I like to follow a lot of Muay Thai related stuff, and just seeing that not many people, only one fighter that I've seen talk directly about the protests in Thailand, and what am I missing out on? Like, there's something that I don't know about that a lot of people know about. I'm not in that mix. But at the same time, it is interesting to see. During this quarantine, I've been a little bit obsessed with UFC. I've been following that. It's my new sports. It's my new Lakers, and I really enjoy that. And I really think that with the conversation going on with politics and stuff like that, I think there's been it's kind of cool, interesting to see all the different characters and the different platforms they stand on. Even though they might not be political, their presence in certain spaces are really political, and I know, but at the same time, I don't want to cast judgment, because at the end of the day, I don't know them personally unless they, say some really, disrespectful things. And I don't, I don't, just like the same way, I don't want people to judge me for, my political views. We can all have larger conversations and learn more from each other, but not to sound like some kind of, some kind of liberal or nothing, but yeah. How do you feel, Danny, about this, about what's been going on, especially during season 1?
Well, I took this moment of the incident on January 6th very lightly at first. Then I grew into taking it more seriously. And when I say I took it lightly, is that I was aware, but when people were saying this is an attempted coup d'etat, I'm like, nah, these are just some really ridiculous people that don't know what they're going to get into. Then I had a talk with several friends, some of them quite versed in politics and even military, and they were like, "You're missing the point. You don't get 66,000 people like this by happenstance. You don't get these type of movements without logistics and planning. And if you think that it was just uh, unorganized chaos funneled through a window, like a pressure valve, then it was stated toward me that I'm missing it. I don't understand it. And that's how I grew to see it. But one of the things that at the beginning I had was something that we've talked about in the past, which is a question that many of us carry, which is like, why do we train? Mm-hmm. We train because we believe that someday we're going to have to use it. Some of us train because we love competition. I don't think I was ever that person, but I always had part of it that I trained under this belief that I was going to use it. And as I get older, I'll be honest, I'm scared. I don't want to ever use this. One, as I get older, I'm even second guessing myself now that I'm older. And the few times that I did use it, I think I said it earlier, I'm embarrassed because I know that it was not necessary. But I check myself now by thinking about how people felt as they saw the madness, the violence, and they said certain things. I've been training for this moment my whole life. I got that quote from a friend of mine. If someone tries to come at me because now it's open season, I'm ready. And I'm going like, no, buddy, no one is coming after you. But I want to also give context to this, and I'm probably speaking contradictory. The protest space, the space of the streets, the city halls, the marches have always been open to confrontation. And I remember the last time that I was there, in a way that I felt that something violent was going to happen. We were all talking about that. We knew that some of us shouldn't be on the front line. We knew that some people were causing a little bit more chaos than they should because they weren't able to see that they weren't able to engage in it. So like, I'll be direct. At one point we had to tell some dude, like, calm down. You don't even know how to fight. Like, literally stop getting in these people's faces. And if things go sideways, we know we can't count on you. Literally, that's how we check that person, because he was putting us at risk because we did not want to fight, but he made it like he was calling people out. Literally, like, come, you want a piece of me? And we're like, dude, don't say that. You don't know how to fight. But to the point, bring it back to what I asked you earlier, like, could you see something that we've been talking about? And I felt that that's what I was seeing. I was seeing like, oh, these are those moments where people feel like, yeah, I'm going to go there prepared for battle. I've been training. And we saw them. I don't know if you were able to catch the people in fatigues, in helmets, in shields, makeshift weapons. These people have been training. And they've been training in the ways that many of us recognize. Backyard dojos, formal dojos. And that's where this conversation intersects with what we've been talking about, martial arts. Because I was also curious, and I'll just say it, but don't acknowledge it because it probably isn't even useful, of what we saw in the moment. So we saw people, for example, running instead of fighting among the videos. And I thought, that makes perfect sense. And some people said, oh, that's lame. That person shouldn't have ran. Look, they're trained. They're actually a police officer. They're supposed to stand up and fight, break some skulls. And I'm like, no. This person made an assessment, tactical assessment, and ran. And maybe they also did a personal assessment and said, I want to go home to my family. And I think those are the talks that we have been having little by little throughout the first season. And I'm curious, like that, like what have we learned about ourselves and about the martial arts, and where do we go from here?
It's interesting. You bring up certain things because the way I see this political, the American dual political spectrum. There's these, like you said, the what we saw on January 6th were a bunch of, some of them were militia type guys who train. And I'm thinking that's like it's always, what seems like the authoritarian types who are the tough guys. And it's like, why are the, progressives, the so-called left, why does it seem like it's so always like, why do they get pigeoned into an anti-gun pacifist, maybe non-violence, or which goes into like not training martial arts, kind of like you got like a new hippie, like, oh, let's treat every, like, I'm like, dude, why is that? I think especially self-defense, and like that old saying, old Japanese saying, it's better to be a soldier in the garden than a gardener in the battlefield, something like that. But yeah, like in Greece, where there was a Muay Thai gym that was open that was for anti-fascists. They're training for self-defense if there were groups of Nazis hanging out. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is, there's always that in my head when I'm just in certain spaces. And shout out to LA progressive shooters, which is like talking about Second Amendment rights within POC communities and contexts, which I think is pretty cool. But there's this one really famous viral clip. It was a protest that had gone with physical conflict. One guy who's dressed in all black, he has looked like he had a metal rod. He just had right hand textbook overhand strike against another protester. The other protester, looked like a bigger dude. This guy had forearm guards on, blocked it, easy block, right hook, and I predict it was a knockout or a near knockout. I was like, man, that's like it was so clean, and I'm like, man, it's so embarrassing. Like, if that wasn't, like, I'm gonna say it. Like, there's a lot of anarcho black bloc protesters who need training, who are like, dude, if there's gonna be some conflict with people with weapons, got to know how to use it. And that's something that's been on my mind just a lot in general. And I think training is great for everybody. I just think it's great for everybody. But you're asking me, like, like on Inauguration Day, UFC Fight Night, Chiesa versus Magny was on, same time during the inauguration. And on the computer, I had two windows up, one of the inauguration and one of UFC. And it was really kind of funny. I was just sitting there going, wow, this is I wonder how many people are doing this right now. So I think it's great that we are involved with ourselves with different spaces and discourses. And I don't know, I try to I don't want to say everywhere at once, but I like what I like, and it's okay. And it's okay not to fall into certain categories. And I think that's why it makes sense what we do. And I'm not competitive, D. Just like I'm not here for competition. I'm here for self-defense. And in turn, there's competition and there's fun. Like I'm having fun, punching and getting punched.
And I think that's probably the place that maybe I can kind of hook this conversation on to, is that you referenced something that I feel many of us have heard, this divide of the weak versus the strong. The weak being aggro, conservative, patriotic, masculine, hetero. The list goes on. And then this idea that, like, we think about this weakness of it that goes like, if you're progressive, if you care about the environment, you may not even be thought of as masculine. Your sexuality might be questioned. But I always think about this divide as this um, non-logical divide because it doesn't make any sense. Um, but it does make sense within my analysis of uh, kind of like the rhetoric, so that my anthro background and looking at gender studies, for example, we can itemize how like patriarchal societies divide or create a binary between the strong and the weak, masculine and feminine. And everything that's masculine is perceived as strong, and everything that's feminine is perceived as weak. And by association, anything that is tied to femininity is called weak. And when we think about us, at least myself as a caring human being, they might say, that's very weak of you. That's very woman-like of you. Or vice versa, that's very woman-like of you. And then add the very weak by association. I now stand in this question by saying that it makes no sense. It shouldn't make any sense, even though I've been raised in a society that has taught me to understand it very well. The statement, you punch like a girl, was not a compliment growing up. No one was saying you punch like the most amazing Muay Thai fighter in the female bracket. They never assumed that. They just said you don't know how to punch because you punch like a girl. But now I think of it as saying, no, if you say you punch like a girl, I can say which one. Which one of the many fighters that I follow? Is it Cyborg? I would love to be able to punch like Cyborg, Chris Cyborg. If they say, oh, you do judo like a girl, I was like, oh, like Ronda Rousey. I would love to be an Olympic level judoka. But I'm only trying to fight against that binary because I own my present vision of what the divide should not be. So that weak versus strong should not be gendered. But it also should not be politicized, as you mentioned. So that if I think of myself as someone that says, hey, I care about the environment, and they scream at me, you tree hugger, and they think that they can come at me and hurt me, like, well, I think it's going to be really hard, and I've been surprised at people's surprise. Like I remember early on, I found it really annoying when I was doing jiu-jitsu, and I would tap someone out. And the teacher would go like, oh, you just got tapped out by a professor. As if that is bad. Like what? Teachers can't do jiu-jitsu? Right? But it was really insulting because it was a backhanded comment. Like, I know they gave me props, but you're saying that because I'm a professor somehow that I shouldn't be able to tap out other people. It's like, no, like I should be able to tap out if I have the skill set and the circumstances, but not because I'm tied to the teaching sector. But teachers, as you mentioned, maybe are thought of as weak. But if I was a construction worker, no one would say, hey, you got tapped out by a construction worker, ha ha ha. They would just probably assume. So I think that we're on the same page, and I wonder if it is about what you stated, that there are places where a lot of us are saying we are not those people anymore, or we never were. We were never weak. Those of us that thought about our moment in time historically, we believe ourselves that we would have made the choice. For example, when I see the videos of the 1960s protest, I'm saying I'm not going to be the one hitting the protesters with a baton. I would have been the one marching. But at the same time, maybe I would have been also the ones defending myself as the aggressors tried to hurt me. Because it's a human right to defend yourself from aggression. And the rhetoric around violence is different. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm not even advocating for that's how the movement toward social justice is going to be made. What I am saying is that I find it frustrating that we have accepted a belief that to be strong means to be conservative, nationalistic, pro-military, and to be weak is to be caring, to want social justice, to care about the environment, to want rights for everyone. I believe all of us, I think that maybe by default that makes me more strong because I'm advocating for these things that require a lot of work.
No, I absolutely, and I like that. I like your breakdown because it's it's so odd that it's like that. Like guys who being tough is driving a big truck. And I'm like, no, that's not tough. That's like a waste of money, waste of gas, and obviously there's something going on that you to bring someone to spend so much money to present an aura of toughness. There's some stuff that they have to work through. But who am I to judge, right? Yeah. So going on to in season 2, what are you hoping to look forward to or dissect more, or is there something that or is there something else?
I was hoping, if it's okay, that maybe if we could go a little bit more introspective. One of the things I was thinking about is when I pose this question, what have we learned? Where do we go from here? I think we've learned a lot, even in our conversations, the few that we've had from last year. But we've learned a lot about ourselves as we've trained. And some of the things that we've learned were disappointing, at least for me. Like whether it is like being a young teenager and knowing that I didn't fight because I was too scared. And I thought, and everyone said, what happened to your karate, buddy? Weren't you that dude that was taking karate? And I was like, man, I couldn't even face them because I was just too scared, And then I think about those other moments where I stood up for someone else in ways that I shouldn't have. Like there was no one backing me up and I was way out of odds and it worked. And then when one said, like, where did that come? It's like, I don't know where that came from, but it happened. And I'm glad I'm here and not on the floor, So I would like to see if we can kind of use the space with a sense of like comfort and safety, obviously, but just kind of think about some introspective questions about our training, about ourselves, and see if anyone feels that they can kind of find value in that.
No, definitely. I mean, sometimes even training and having so much common interest with others in the gym, I still feel not alone because there's so much support, I guess. But like sometimes it's like, man, I want to talk Muay Thai. I kind of nerd out. Oh, people from different gyms. I'm trying to learn different fighters. There's so much to catch up on. The golden era of Muay Thai, but there's so many people who don't nerd out, and I'm a little bit disappointed. Like I want to know that the history. Like what am I doing? What am I studying here? And that's why I appreciate so much stuff on the internet. So looking into ourselves, I think that's a good start, and I think I need to look into myself some more. I mean, it's like it's almost like a lot of times when when somebody's on a psychedelic experience, we're looking into ourselves to learn more about ourselves. There's nothing new that whatever the plant brings is very introspective, and so I think it's a good practice to have introspection and patience, and I need to be patient with myself a little more too.
Well, on that note, I want to thank the listeners for joining us here on Reroll MMA, where we explore the intersection of martial arts, society, and culture. Peace.